There's a picture going around. It's of Greta Thunberg on the left, and then you have Kyle Rittenhouse on the right. And I'm going to give the breakdown and the perspective of each side of the political aisle, and then establish why this is important to our viewing, even though it's a simple picture, it's a simple meme, it's being spread around. So you have Greta Thunberg, you have Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, from the left's perspective, they're looking at Greta Thunberg as someone who's a political activist, a climate activist. She's young, she's a child, she's been doing this for a long time. She cares about the environment. She's using a megaphone. She's being civilly disobedient. She's part of a cause that a lot of world leaders are not following through on. They're not working with her actively, but some are, but not the majority of the world. And she's trying to garnish their attention. She's trying to not necessarily gain more respect, but gain more funding and more of an ideology towards this catastrophe that is unfolding. And then they look at Kyle Rittenhouse, again, this is the left, and they see someone, a kid, let's say they're around the same age. I think they're different, but let's say, they're in their teens, and Kyle Rittenhouse is someone who is carrying a weapon. He was involved in going against certain protests that were fighting for justice. He was part of these protests, but an antagonist to these protests. And he went there with a weapon, and he unjustly took lives, and he was not held responsible in the judicial system, and that was an atrocity to our entire institution of the United States of America. And so that's the left's perspective. Now, from the right looks at Greta Thunberg, and they say, well, she's a pawn. She's been groomed by her parents. She's been groomed by a lot of people behind the parents. She stages a lot of these arrests or these scenes, these chaotic scenes that they have a photo opportunity for. She's advocating to certain world leaders, but world leaders are also virtue signaling for her because they're really trying to garnish votes and power and wealth. They're trying to emotionally manipulate the public to garnish all of those things that I just mentioned, because they get to maintain their power in this in their hierarchy. They get to maintain their status in the hierarchy. And for Greta Thunberg, well, she's a young kid. She loves the attention. She's gaining some kind of wealth and opportunity from this. This is now her job. So she gets to portray a certain narrative. And there's even clips of, if you ask Greta Thunberg questions, she has no idea how to answer them properly because she's really just a pawn that's part of the system. And then the right will look at Kyle Rittenhouse and they'll say, well, this is someone who went to these riots, which were classified as mostly peaceful, but they were riots. And he was coming in to defend private property. He made an agreement with certain owners. I'm going to defend private property. I'm going to stand my ground over here. I have the right to be here just like everyone else. People came up to him. They attacked him. And he justly defended himself. And the judicial system proved that. And so that was a foundational moment that didn't set precedent, but preserved the precedent of self-defense. So you have two conflicting perspectives here. And the question here is, why are there two different perspectives? There are two different perspectives because we have people who, we all have access to the same information. So we're all gathering these different data points. We're looking through this information, and some people are connecting the dots differently than other people. So even though we all have access to the same information, not everyone consumes all the information. You'll have certain people who only consume a dogmatic, narrow point of view. You'll have other people who consume not just the information that satisfies their beliefs, their cognitive bias, but they'll look at other people's perspectives. They'll look at all the news channels. They'll look at independent articles, independent creators, and then they'll make a judgment call. Then they'll make a decision. So right off the bat, you have one aisle who is very narrow in their information and another aisle who is more broad in their information. Then they're taking the information and they're sitting down and critically thinking, or not critically thinking. Okay, so you take the information, then you have to process it. Then your brain, which is like a computer, has to process the information and tie it back to the reality of the world. You have to throw in some empathy in there. What is it like to be in these other people's shoes? Let's use the preservation of individual rights, for example. I use that all the time. To understand individual rights, you have to put yourself in other people's shoes. I would not like X, Y, and Z to happen to me. Therefore, I won't commit X, Y, and Z to another person. That would be an infringement. There's some empathy that's happening there. So it's seeing everything from a different perspective. That's really what it is. So you take the data points, you critically think. If you don't critically think and you don't process the information, you're not going to get a better result. You're not going to get a better outcome. So already, even if you did critically think, if you are very narrow with your data points, very narrow with your perspective, and then you critically think, you're still going to get a skewed result, a skewed perspective, or let's say a more skewed result than if you had gained multiple different data points, multiple different perspectives. After that, you gain multiple different data points, multiple different perspectives, you critically think, you come up with a result. Now, this last part is there's so many different variables to this: impressions, your experiences, your interactions with people, your genetic predisposition, how your brain is wired, a lot of neurochemistry here, but that is just how you connect the dots. So how you take all this information, how you critically think, how you process the information, and then how you connect the dots. Think about one of those pictures we had when we were kids. Let's say you're 6, 7 years old, and you have a little drawing, maybe you get it like at one of those restaurants, but it has a bunch of dots, and the dots are numbered 1 to 50. And when you connect the dots together, you create a certain image, and then you can color in the image, whatever it is. So let's say the dots connect, and they create a mermaid. Now, some of them are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 50. Some of them are not numbered, and you have to figure it out. How you connect those dots will determine if you get the correct image of a mermaid, or if you create something else like a ghost, or whatever you're perceiving that you're creating. So if you're not able to connect those dots properly, like on that picture, I'm giving a very simplistic example here. If you can't connect the dots properly, you're not going to get the proper image. In this case, it was intended to be a picture of a mermaid. But let's just say, well, we can say that a lot of events are orchestrated. So the picture, you would want to come up with the result that you see the picture or the macro picture of what was designed out there or what was orchestrated out there. So if you don't connect the dots properly, you're not going to see that orchestrated picture. Not every event is orchestrated. I'm just using that as an example. So how you connect the dots, there's no way to really teach that. I mean, you can go through different iterations and get better at it. But some people are going to be better at connecting the dots than other people. But what you can do better at is gaining multiple different perspectives, gaining different data points, gathering different information from the left, the right, the middle, moderate, far-fetched ideas, and then sitting down and critically thinking and actually processing these ideas, these concepts, different ideologies, historical contexts, potential future consequences. When you do that, you guarantee yourself more of a chance of actually connecting the dots, and then you can actually get to the truth. You can actually get to the intended, or it's not really intended for you, but an intended event that was designed to form a certain narrative, to form a certain result.